I want to tell you something that happened in front of me a few summers ago, and I still think about it. It was a Tuesday. I remember because my sister had a dentist appointment that morning and I'd promised to walk around with her after, just to kill time. We ended up near the mall in London. You know that long road that leads up to Buckingham Palace? That one. The trees on both sides were heavy with leaves. The air smelled like cut grass and engine oil from the black cabs. There was a crowd already gathering by the gates. Maybe 200 people, maybe more. Tourists with phones out, kids on shoulders, an old woman in a yellow raincoat even though the sky was completely clear. Americans, Japanese, Germans, a big group of schoolchildren in matching red caps, everyone waiting for the same thing. The changing of the guard. You've probably seen the videos. The bearskin hats, the red tunics, the slow, perfect march. It looks like a film set, it looks unreal. But what I want to tell you about isn't the ceremony. It's about a man I met 3 hours before it started. His name was Callum. I won't say his last name. He was sitting on a bench near St. James's Park, eating a sausage roll out of a paper bag, and he was crying. Not loud. Just quiet, the way men cry when they don't want anyone to see, shoulders still, eyes leaking. My sister noticed him first. She has that habit. She nudged me and said, "That lad's not okay." I almost walked past. I really almost did, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he was sitting, back straight, even while crying, like someone had taught him how to sit and he couldn't unlearn it. I sat down a meter away. Didn't say anything for a bit, just watched the ducks. After a while he spoke first. "You all right, mate?" That was all it took. We started talking, just nothing at first, the weather, the price of train tickets. He had a soft northern accent, Manchester, maybe Bolton. He was 24. He had hands like someone who'd done real work with them, calloused knuckles, a small scar across the back of his right wrist. Then he told me why he was sitting there. He'd just been rejected from the foot guard selection. That morning, about an hour before we met. I didn't even know what that meant at first. I thought, you just joined the army and they put you wherever. I thought the lads in the red coats outside the palace were just regular soldiers in fancy dress. I was wrong about almost everything. Callum explained it slow, like he needed to say it out loud to believe it. "You don't just sign up to be a royal guard," he said. "It doesn't work like that." He told me he'd joined the British Army 4 years ago. Infantry. He'd done a tour. He'd seen things he didn't want to talk about. He had the medals. He had the fitness scores. He had everything on paper. But that wasn't enough, not even close. He explained that the soldiers you see outside the palace, the ones in the bearskin hats, they come from 5 regiments. 5 specific regiments. The Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards, the Scots Guards, the Irish Guards, the Welsh Guards, that's it. No one else. If you serve in any other regiment in the British Army, no matter how good you are, no matter how many tours you've done, you don't stand at that gate. Not ever. Unless you transfer in. And transferring in is the hard part. I asked him why he wanted it so badly. He looked at me with red eyes and said something I'll never forget. Because my granddad stood at that gate. In 1962, he stood there for 2 hours in the rain and didn't move. And my dad always said, "Son, that's what a man looks like. That's what a man looks like." I didn't know what to say to that. He kept talking. He told me about the selection. He told me what they put him through. And the more he talked, the more I started to understand that what we see on those postcards, those tourists' photos, those Instagram reels, that's not just a man standing still. That's the final 2% of a process that breaks 98 people out of 100. Let me try to explain what Callum told me, the way he told me, because I think most people have no idea. When you join the British Army, you go through basic training. That's already brutal. People drop out in the first 2 weeks. They go home, they cry on the phone, they never come back. But let's say you survive basic. You finish your phase 1 and phase 2. You get your beret. You join your regiment. You become a soldier. Now if you joined one of the 5 Foot Guards regiments directly, you start a different path. Your training is at Catterick in Yorkshire in a place called the Infantry Training Centre. It's specifically the Guards wing. The instructors there don't smile. They don't joke. There's a saying among the lads who have been through it. At Catterick, the floor wants you on your face. The drill is the killer, not the physical stuff, though that's hard too. The drill, hours and hours of it, standing in formation, marching in exact time, turning on a precise count. If your boot lands 1/10 of a second late, the sergeant sees it. He sees everything. Callum told me about a lad in his initial training group years ago when he tried the first time. The lad was strong, top of the physical scores, could run 10 miles with a pack like it was a stroll, but he couldn't stand still. That sounds stupid, doesn't it? Couldn't stand still. But Callum said it was the thing that broke him. The lad would twitch. His left eye would flicker. His weight would shift. After 90 seconds at attention, his shoulders would drop 1 millimeter. The instructor saw it. The instructor always sees it. That lad failed. He didn't get binned from the army. He just didn't make it into the Guards. He ended up somewhere else. Logistics, I think Callum said. A good job, a real job, but not the one he'd wanted. That's the first thing people don't understand. The Guard isn't about strength. It's about stillness. And stillness is harder than strength. Callum took a bite of his sausage roll. He'd stopped crying by now. Talking about it was helping him. I think he needed someone who didn't know anything to ask the right questions. So what happened to you? I asked. Today, what did they do to you? He laughed a little, a short, bitter laugh. They put me in a room, he said. He explained. After the physical tests, after the medical, after the interview, there's a part of the selection that nobody talks about. The lads who go through it never describe it in detail. There's an unspoken code, but Callum was past caring. They put him in a room, a small room, bare walls, 1 chair. They told him to stand at attention. They told him not to move. They told him he'd be observed. And then they left. For how long, I asked. He shrugged. I don't know, felt like 40 minutes. Could have been 20, could have been an hour, there's no clock. He stood there, he breathed slow. He felt his calves start to burn. He felt sweat run down the inside of his collar. He felt his nose itch, the way your nose only itches when you can't scratch it. And then he said, the door opened. A man walked in. An older man, not in uniform, civilian clothes, cardigan, glasses. He looked, Callum said, like a geography teacher. The man didn't say anything. He walked around Callum. He looked at his boots. He looked at his collar. He stood directly behind him for what felt like a full minute, just breathing. Then he came round to the front. And he started talking. He told Callum that his mother had been calling the regiment all week, that she was worried about him, that she said he was unstable. He told Callum that one of his old commanders had filed a report saying he had anger issues. He told Callum that there were photos on his phone that the recruitment team had found concerning. None of it was true. Callum knew none of it was true. His mum had passed 3 years before. His old commanders had given him glowing reports. There was nothing on his phone. But the man kept talking. Calm voice. Sad eyes. He said Callum's brother had been in trouble with the police. He said Callum's girlfriend had told the army welfare team she was scared of him. Callum didn't have a brother. He didn't have a girlfriend. It was a test. It was all a test. The man wanted to see if Callum would react, if he'd flinch, if he'd open his mouth to defend himself, if his eyes would narrow, if his fists would clench. Because here's the thing they need to know about a royal guard. They need to know what he does when a stranger walks up to him and spits in his face. They need to know what he does when a drunk tourist screams obscenities about his mother 3 inches from his nose. They need to know what he does when a child throws a half-eaten ice cream at his chest. They need to know what he does when someone tries to touch him, grab him, push him, dare him. Because all of that happens every day outside the gates. People do it for TikTok. People do it because they're drunk. People do it because they think it's funny. And the guard has to stand there. He has to be a statue. He has to be more than a man. He has to be the wall between the crown and the world. So they sit you in a room and they tell you your mother is dead, and your brother is a criminal, and your girlfriend is afraid of you. And they watch your face. Callum had held it. He'd held it for the whole 40 minutes, or 20, or hour. He'd stood there and not moved a muscle and not changed his expression and not said a word. So I asked him, "Then why did you fail?" He looked at me, and he said, because right at the end when he was about to leave, the man said one more thing. He said, "Your granddad would be ashamed of you." And Callum's lip had moved, just a fraction, just the corner, a muscle twitching for half a second. The man had seen it. The man had nodded. And the man had left. That was the end. No discussion, no appeal. The next morning, Callum was told he hadn't been selected. For one twitch, 1/2-second twitch. He told me, sitting on that bench, that he understood why. He didn't agree with it, but he understood. Because if a man in a cardigan can break you with one sentence about your granddad, then 1,000 drunks and tourists and protesters could break you too. And the day you break is the day someone gets close to the crown. And that day, they decided, would not happen. I sat there, and I thought about that for a long time. We walked back together towards the palace, because that's where I was going, and he was going somewhere near there anyway. He said he wanted to watch the changing of the guard. One last time, before he caught his train home. The crowd was thick now, 3 deep against the railings. A police officer was telling someone to move their pram. A man with an Italian flag draped over his shoulders was holding up a selfie stick. Somewhere a child was crying because she wanted ice cream. The first sounds of the band started in the distance. That low, slow brass sound. You feel it in your chest before you hear it properly. And then they came. They came down the road in perfect lines, boots hitting the ground at the same instant, rifles at the exact same angle, bearskins motionless above blank faces. Callum stood next to me, and he didn't speak. I looked at him. His eyes were wet again, but he wasn't crying. He was watching. He was studying them. I tried to look at them the way he was looking at them. Not as a show, not as a postcard, but as the last 2%. The 2 out of 100 who didn't twitch. The guard that day, the one closest to us, was a tall lad with red hair sticking out from under his bearskin. Couldn't have been older than 21. His face was so still it looked carved. He didn't blink. He didn't swallow. His chest moved with breath, but nothing else moved. And I thought, this is a kid. This is somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody who 2 years ago was probably sitting in a McDonald's in Liverpool or Cardiff eating chips after football practice. And now he stands here, and the whole world walks past him, and he is a stone. The crowd was loud. Cameras clicked. A woman shouted at her husband to take her photo. A child screamed because he dropped his toy. A man was arguing with his wife in French. None of it touched the guards. None of it landed. I noticed something else. The discipline wasn't just in the standing. It was in the small things. The way the lad's eyes never moved towards a noise. The way his hand on the rifle was at the exact same height as the lad next to him. The way when they did move, when it came time to change position, the move was so synchronized it looked like one body in 5 places. Callum whispered something to me. I almost didn't catch it. He said, "It's not a job, it's a state of being." I turned to look at him, but he was looking past the guards now, through them, at something I couldn't see. The ceremony went on, 20 minutes, half an hour, the band played. The new guard relieved the old guard, salutes, marches. The crowd took 10,000 photographs. And then, near the end, something happened that I'll tell you about in the next part. Because it changes everything I thought I knew about why some men make it and others don't. It involved a tourist, an American woman, and a moment I will never ever forget. So where was I? The ceremony was almost over. The new guard had taken position. The old guard was marching off. The band was still playing, but quieter now, the music fading down the road towards Wellington Barracks. Most of the tourists had got their photos and were starting to drift. The crowd thinned. The sun came out from behind a cloud and the whole gate suddenly looked yellow and gold, postcard light. Callum and I were still standing near the railings. He hadn't moved. I think he wanted to stay until the last possible moment. And that's when she walked over. The woman. She was American. You could tell from 20 feet away. Loud voice, denim jacket with a flag patch on the shoulder, a baseball cap that said something I couldn't read. She was with two friends. They were laughing. One of them had a phone up, already filming. She walked right up to the red-haired guard, the one I'd been watching, the one with the carved face. She got close, too close, within a foot of him. She put her hand on her hip and tilted her head and said, loud enough for the whole crowd to hear, Hey, look at me, come on, I know you can hear me." The guard didn't move. Of course he didn't. Her friend laughed. The one with the phone moved in closer. She kept going. "You think you're so tough, standing there like a doll. Bet you've never even been in a real fight." I felt my stomach go cold. Not because of her, exactly. Because of the energy. You know that feeling when you're watching something about to go wrong and you can't stop it. I looked at Callum. He'd gone completely still, like he'd forgotten how to breathe. She kept poking at the guard with words. Said he probably lived with his mum. Said his uniform was a costume. Said he should smile because the world wasn't that bad. She wasn't even saying anything that interesting, that's the thing. It was just nothing, just noise. But she said it for a long time, 2-3 minutes, and the lad didn't move. I want you to imagine that. 3 minutes is a long time. Try standing in front of a mirror and not moving for 3 minutes while somebody insults you. Try not blinking too much. Try not letting your face change. The guard's face didn't change. Not once. His eyes stayed fixed at a point on the wall behind her head. His mouth stayed in that exact neutral line. His chest rose and fell with breath, and that was it. Then she did the thing. She reached out with her finger, and she touched his bearskin hat. A little prod, a tap, the way you'd poke a balloon to see if it pops. And the crowd went quiet. The whole crowd, I felt it. The chatter dropped. People who'd been laughing stopped laughing. Phones came up. Everyone could feel something was about to happen. Because here's what I didn't know then, but Callum told me later. You're not allowed to touch a royal guard. It's not even an army rule. It's a law. A real law with real consequences. And the guards are trained, if it happens, to respond. Not to attack. Never to attack, but to make themselves known. The lad came alive. I don't mean he moved fast. I mean he moved exactly. His boots came together with a crack that I swear I felt in my ribs. His rifle came up across his body in a movement so quick and so clean that the woman jumped backwards and dropped her phone. And he shouted. He shouted one sentence. I'm not even going to try to write it the way he said it, because you have to hear it to understand. But it was something like, "Stand back from the Queen's Guard." That was it, 6 words, but the voice was something else. It wasn't anger, it was authority. It was the voice of a man telling you the building is on fire and you need to leave now and there is no time to argue. The woman went pale. I'm not exaggerating. The blood left her face. Her friend stopped filming. The phone clattered on the pavement. And then the lad came back to attention, as if he'd never moved, as if the last 4 seconds hadn't happened. His face went back to that carved stillness. His rifle returned to its position. His eyes returned to that point on the wall. But everyone had seen. A police officer came over straight away. He must have been watching from the start. He took the woman by the elbow, gently but firmly, and walked her away. She was protesting. saying it was a joke, saying she didn't know, saying her phone was broken now and the guard owed her. The officer wasn't interested. He walked her off down the road and I never saw her again. The lad stood there like nothing had happened. The crowd slowly started to talk again. People asked each other if they'd seen it. Phones replayed the footage. Somewhere a child asked her dad if the soldier was angry. And I looked at Callum, and Callum was staring at the lad like he was seeing a ghost. We walked away from the palace after that, down towards the park. Callum was quiet for a long time. I bought him a coffee from a stand. He held it but didn't drink it. Finally he said, "Did you see what he did?" I said, "Yeah, I saw it." He shook his head. "No, you didn't see it. You saw the move. You didn't see what he didn't do." I waited. "He didn't look at her," Callum said. "Not once. Not before, not during, not after. He shouted at her and his eyes never moved to her face. Do you understand how hard that is? Do you understand the discipline that takes?" I didn't really, but I tried. He explained. He said when someone is shouting at you, when someone is right in your face, your eyes go to theirs. It's biology, you can't help it. Your brain wants to see the threat. It's a survival thing from when we were apes. You look. You can't stop yourself looking. But that lad hadn't looked, even when he shouted at her, even when he brought his rifle up. His eyes had stayed on the wall. He'd processed her threat through his peripheral vision and his ears and his training. He'd shouted at a point in space, not at a person, because looking at her would have been an acknowledgement. Looking at her would have given her something. She'd wanted his attention. He'd never given it to her. That, Callum said, is what they're testing for. That is what the 4 months of selection is trying to find. They're not trying to find men who can stand still. Anyone can stand still. They're trying to find men who can refuse to engage. He told me about the other tests, the ones he'd done over the months. One of them, they took the candidates out for a run. A normal army run. 8 miles full kit. But halfway through the run, an instructor sprinted up next to one of the lads and started screaming at him. Just screaming. Nothing technical. Nothing about his form. Just shouting that he was rubbish, that he was a disgrace, that his family didn't love him, that he was wasting everyone's time. The lad turned his head to look, just for a second, just to see who was screaming at him. He was binned. End of the run. He didn't even know why until they told him 3 days later. Because, Callum explained, the test wasn't the run. The test was whether your discipline survived the screaming. Whether you could be told you were rubbish and just keep moving forward, eyes ahead, no acknowledgement. That's what stands at the gate. That's what most soldiers, even good soldiers, even brave soldiers who have done real things in real wars, cannot do. Because there's something in human beings that needs to be seen, needs to defend itself, needs to say, "Hey, I'm here, I matter, you can't talk to me like that." And the guards have to kill that thing in themselves. They have to bury it. Not in a war zone where killing it would make you a hero. In a tourist trap on a sunny afternoon where killing it makes you a postcard. We sat on the grass in St. James's Park. The ducks waddled past us. A pigeon tried to steal a chip from someone's lunch and they shouted and it flew off. I asked Callum about the physical side, because I'd been wondering, how fit do you have to be, really, just to stand still? He laughed, properly laughed this time, a real one. "Mate," he said, "standing still for 2 hours is one of the hardest physical things a human body can do." He explained, when you walk, when you run, when you sit, your blood moves. Your muscles pump, your weight shifts, everything is in motion. But when you stand at attention, completely motionless for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3, the blood pools in your legs, your feet swell. Your back muscles, which have been locked in one position, start to scream. The small muscles in your face, which you don't even know you have until they ache, start to ache. People faint, it happens. Even trained guards faint sometimes on hot days. There are videos of it. Lads going down like felled trees, hitting the ground with a thump that makes the crowd gasp. And they're not allowed to break their fall properly. They have to go down stiff. They have to go down like a soldier. So part of the selection is physical conditioning that no normal infantry needs. Slow squats, wall sits that last 40 minutes, standing drills on a hard floor for hours. Your knees take a battering. Your lower back takes a battering. There are guards in their 30s who walk with limps and bad knees and shoulder problems, and they're still standing at the gate every other week. It's a body sacrifice. That's the term Callum used. A body sacrifice. You give up parts of yourself, parts that won't heal, parts that will hurt forever so that you can stand in that uniform and be the wall. I asked him if he still wanted it, after being rejected, after all of that. He looked at me for a long time. "I'd do it again tomorrow," he said. "I'd fail it again, and I'd be glad I tried." Now, this is where the story gets to the part I really want to tell you. The reason I'm telling all of this. Because something happened later that day, a few hours after Callum and I split up, that made everything he'd told me make sense. Callum had gone to catch his train. We swapped numbers, said we'd stay in touch, the way you do. I never actually heard from him again. That's how those things go. I'd stayed in London because I had to meet my sister at a restaurant in the evening. I had a few hours to kill. I walked back towards the palace. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted to see the lad again. The red-haired one. The carved one. He was still on duty, still standing there. The crowd had thinned out a lot. The tour buses had moved on. There was a quietness now, just the sound of pigeons and the occasional car. That's when the boy appeared. A small boy, maybe 6 years old, blonde hair, Wellington boots even though it wasn't raining. He'd run ahead of his parents who were walking slowly behind him, looking tired. He was holding a toy, a little plastic horse. He ran right up to the railings, closer than most adults would. He looked up at the red-haired guard with wide blue eyes. And then he did something. He saluted. Wobbly little salute, wrong hand, fingers all over the place. The kind of salute a 6-year-old does when he's seen something on telly and is copying it. The guard didn't move, of course not. He was at attention, he was on duty. But something happened to his eyes. I was watching closely. I was maybe 10 feet away, and I swear to you I saw it. His eyes, which had been fixed on that point on the wall, did not move. They did not look down at the boy. The rules forbid it. The discipline forbids it. But they did something else. They got wet, just a touch, a film of moisture, the faintest gleam in the afternoon light. That was it, that was all. No tear fell, no muscle twitched. His face stayed carved. His mouth stayed straight. But for a fraction of a second, behind that mask, there was a man who had been a boy once, holding a toy horse, looking up at a soldier at a gate. A man whose granddad maybe had stood here too. A man who had given up his ability to react to insults, to threats, to provocations, but who could not, give up his ability to be moved by a child saluting him. The boy's mum came up and laughed and apologized. She pulled him gently back. The boy turned to wave at the guard. The guard didn't wave back. He couldn't. But I think he saw all of it. I'll tell you what happened after that in the last part, because that was the moment I finally understood what makes a royal guard. And it isn't what I thought it was. It isn't discipline exactly. It isn't toughness. It's something else. Something Callum had been trying to tell me all day, but I needed to see it to know. After the boy and his mum walked away, I stayed. I don't know why. I should have gone. I had time to kill, but I could have killed it anywhere. There was nothing happening at the palace. The crowd was almost gone. It was that strange in-between hour, late afternoon, when the tourists go back to their hotels and the locals haven't come out yet for the evening. But I stood there, maybe 100 feet from the gate, leaning against a tree. And I watched the red-haired guard. I watched him for a long time, maybe 45 minutes. He didn't move, not once. Cars went past. A jogger ran by with a Labrador. A man on a bicycle stopped to look at his phone and then carried on. None of it touched the guard. He was a fixture. He was part of the gate, part of the wall. I started to see what Callum had meant. I started to see what most people, when they snap a quick photo and walk away, never see. The stillness wasn't emptiness. It wasn't a switched-off man. It was the opposite. It was a man so fully switched on, so fully present, so fully aware, that the stillness was the cost of all that awareness. He was watching everything. From under that bearskin, behind that fixed gaze, his peripheral vision was tracking every movement, every person who walked towards the gate, every car that slowed near the curb, every bag that got set down on a bench. He was a soldier in a war zone, except the war zone was disguised as a tourist attraction. I thought about what Callum had said, about selection, about why most soldiers, even good ones, couldn't do this job. It wasn't about being tough. The British Army is full of tough people, lads who have carried wounded mates through Helmand, lads who have gone through hell weeks of training in the Brecon Beacons that would kill an ordinary man. There are tougher soldiers than the Guards, specialists, commandos, paras, all harder in some ways, all more dangerous. But none of them could do this. Because this isn't toughness. This is a different thing. This is taking your whole personality, your whole reactive self, the bit of you that says I and me and no and how dare you, and putting it in a box, and closing the box, and standing there for 2 hours while the world tries to open the box. Some people, Callum had said, can't even start the process. They get to selection and they realize within a week that they can't suppress themselves that hard. They volunteer to leave. They go back to their original regiments and they have good careers and they're proud and they should be proud. It's not weakness. It's a different shape of strength. Some people get further. They get through the physical, through the drill, through the discipline tests. They get to the final stages, and then something small breaks them. A flinch, a blink at the wrong moment, a word said under their breath when they thought no one was listening. The instructors see it. The instructors always see it. And some people, the rarest people, the 2 out of 100 people, get through. They get the bearskin. They get the rifle. They stand at the gate. And then the real test starts, because the selection wasn't the end. The selection was just to see if you could begin. The job itself, day after day, week after week, year after year, that's where most of them eventually break too. Most guards don't do it forever. Most rotate out after a few years. The body gives up. The mind gives up. Some men just decide they've given enough. And nobody blames them. Nobody should blame them. The men who stay for a decade, the men who become senior guards and instructors, those are something else again. Those are the last of the last. I want to tell you one more thing that happened that day. I was still leaning against the tree, watching, when a man walked up to the guard. He was older, maybe 70, maybe older, tweed jacket, walking stick. He moved slowly like his hip was bad. He came right up to the railings. He didn't touch anything. He didn't shout. He just stood there. And he saluted. A proper salute, old-fashioned, the kind you'd see in a black and white film. Hand snapped to the brow, held for 3 seconds, released. Then he stood there, quiet, watching the guard. The guard didn't move, didn't return the salute. He couldn't. He was on duty. The rules are the rules. But the old man stood there for a long time. A minute maybe 2, just looking. And then I noticed something. He was crying quietly, tears on a lined face. He wasn't sobbing. He was just standing there, letting it happen. After a while, an officer came over. Not roughly, just gently. A police officer, the same one who dealt with the American woman earlier. He spoke quietly to the old man. The old man nodded. He said something I couldn't hear. The officer nodded back. They talked for a minute. The officer touched the old man's shoulder. The old man wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Then the old man turned, and he walked away, slowly down the road past me. I don't know what made me speak. I'm not a brave person. I don't usually talk to strangers, but I said, "Are you all right, sir?" He stopped. He looked at me. He had the kind of face you don't see much anymore. Lines that meant something. Eyes that had seen a lot. He said, "Were you watching?" I said, "Yeah, for a while." He nodded. He looked back at the gate, at the guard, at the bearskin still motionless in the afternoon light. "My boy stood there," he said. "1987 to 1991. Grenadier Guards, he's gone now, cancer, 6 years ago. I come down here every year on his birthday, to see them, to see what he used to be." He was quiet for a moment. He leaned on his stick. "People walk past these lads," he said. "They take their photos, they have a laugh, they have no idea what's underneath that uniform, no idea what it costs." I didn't know what to say, I just nodded. "My boy," he said. "He was the best of us, I always thought that. And every other guard at that gate, he's somebody's best too, somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's pride." He looked at me with eyes that were too tired and too clear. "Most soldiers can't do this job," he said. "Most soldiers shouldn't even try. There's no shame in not trying. The shame would be in pretending. The army needs every kind of soldier, mechanics, drivers, cooks, engineers, snipers, medics, all needed, all necessary. But this, what you see at this gate, this is one specific thing. And it's not for everybody, and it shouldn't be. If it was, it wouldn't mean what it means." He patted my arm. He had a strong grip for an old man. "My boy used to say something," he said. "He used to say, 'Dad, when I'm standing there, I'm not me anymore. I'm a country.'" He turned and walked off down the mall. I never saw him again either. I went and met my sister for dinner that evening. I told her about Callum. I told her about the American woman. I told her about the boy with the toy horse. I told her about the old man. She listened. She's a good listener, my sister. When I finished, she said, "Why are you telling me all this?" And I had to think about it. I said, because I used to think those lads at the gate were just decoration. I used to think it was a tourist thing, a show, and it isn't. She said, "Then what is it?" I thought for a bit. I drank my drink. I tried to find the words. I said, "It's a kind of promise. A promise that you can be all the things a human being is, all the angry and the proud and the loud and the reactive, and then you can choose to put all of that away. Not because someone's making you, not because you're scared, but because you've decided that the thing you're guarding is more important than your own ego." She raised her eyebrows. "That's quite deep for you." I laughed. I said, "Yeah, don't get used to it." But I meant it. You see those lads at the gate. You take your photo. You have a giggle with your mates because his hat is huge and his face is so serious and he looks like he's frozen. You move on. You go and look at the next thing. But what you walked past is a man who has been broken and rebuilt by months of selection. A man who has had strangers in cardigans tell him his mother was a liar to see if he'd flinch. A man who has run 8 miles being screamed at and not turned his head. A man who has done body sacrifices that will hurt his joints for the rest of his life. A man who has been a candidate, then a recruit, then a soldier, then a guard. A man who has stood in the rain for 2 hours and not moved. Not every soldier in the British Army can do that. Not every soldier should. Out of every 100 men who try, about 98 find out it isn't for them. They go off and do other things, important things, necessary things, things that make the army, but they don't stand at that gate. The two who stay, they're not better men. They're just the right men, for that exact, specific, impossible job. So next time you're in London and you see one of them, don't just take the photo. Stop. Stand still as you can. Try not to blink for a full minute. You'll see how hard it is. And he's doing it for hours. And he's doing it with his rifle. And he's doing it while a man behind him with binoculars is watching to see if his collar slips a millimeter out of line. I think about Callum sometimes. I hope he's all right. I hope he found something that suits him. He had something special in him, that lad. He just didn't have the one specific thing this one specific job requires. I think about the red-haired guard. I don't know his name. I'll never know his name. He's probably somewhere else now, posted to another duty or maybe out of the guards entirely. But for the few hours I watched him, he was, in that uniform, the closest thing to a perfect man I've ever seen. I think about the boy with the toy horse. He won't remember any of this, but somewhere in him, somewhere deep, a small print was pressed that day. The print of a man who didn't move. Maybe in 20 years he'll come back, older, taller, and he'll stand at that gate himself. I think about the old man with the stick. I hope he's still well. I hope he has people who love him. I hope he keeps going down to the mall every year on his boy's birthday. I hope, one of these years, he stands there and feels his boy standing next to him. You can't see it from the outside, that's the thing. A royal guard isn't a man. He isn't a costume. He isn't a postcard. A royal guard is the place where a country puts its quietest pride. And not every soldier can carry that. That's why they choose so few. That's why they break so many. That's why the ones who make it stand the way they stand. Because they're not standing for themselves. They never were.